Welcome to Dystopian Renaissance. I'm your host, Johnny Sage. I'm back after a bit of a hiatus. Last time you might have watched or listened, I was doing the guest episode in the studio format. Now the new format for the time being is going to be the walk and talks, just me. I'm going back to the roots. I started with those 3 short solo episodes, and that's what I'm going to try to go back to. And I will come back to the guest episodes because there's definitely some more people I want to interview and promise I'd get on the show. And they have great information and amazing stories to tell. That'll definitely be happening. The only problem with the guest episodes was there was a long turnaround time. From the time I shot those episodes to the release, there was easily 2 to 3 months in between. Because you don't know how much work goes into a podcast, especially a video one. But not only do you have to record the audio and video and make sure that gets done properly, which it doesn't always. But then you have to edit it. And then you also do thumbnails, show notes. And then even releasing them, usually you have to do multiple sites. There's some platforms that you can just do, like one platform will release it to multiple sites, but there's usually not one for all of them. So even with the convenience, there's still some others. You have to use more than one, unless if there is one be-all end-all solution, please feel free to let me know. And on top of that, I was releasing the clips, which were coming out great, but there was a lag of between a year and a year and a half from when the episode would release to when the short clips were being released. And I mean, that sounds crazy in one regard, and I do want to get better at that. Once I catch up with releasing the clips for the last, I think I have about 5 more guest episodes to catch up on. Then I would like to catch up and release the clips closer to when the actual episode comes out. So that way people can see if it's an episode that they want to check out, if the information is something that they'll relate to. It was kind of a blessing in disguise, because sometimes my guests would forget that they even said that. And they'd be like, wow, I gave a lot of great information. So it's kind of refreshing for them, and a nice reminder of the work they did and the information they were putting out there. The best example of this was last November. I had a friend and a guest who, when I released a clip, she said that she experienced what the clip talked about the day before that. And had that released when, in theory, it's supposed to, it wouldn't have really resonated with her. It would have just been some information, which is great, but it would have really been like, wow, wait a minute. When you get that kind of deja vu and do a double take feeling. Well, that happened. And it wasn't the first time someone's told me that. That happened 2 or 3 other times. And when the clips were being released much farther out than when the episode was, it sometimes gave that episode a second life. People would go back to watch that episode that might not have been following me or the podcast accounts and have known about it. And then be like, oh, wow, this is something that I do want to check out. It was some benefit, and you could argue it was a blessing in disguise, but I do want to get better at that going forward once I catch up with the last guest episodes that I'm a little behind on. But they're coming out better and better quality, and we're figuring out better stuff. So I'm growing with the process, and the people I work with are growing with the process. It's kind of nice just seeing our evolution growing together. And I think the other reason I want to do solo episodes, get back to them for a while, is because sometimes it's hard for me to talk about truth when a guest is on, because they have a great story and they'll go into their background and talk about all sorts of good stuff with spirituality and consciousness, but not all of them are into the true stuff. And I don't want to, just come out of nowhere. Hey, it was something really esoteric and obscure that, we get into. So that's why I didn't want to, kind of taint the great information they were giving with if they weren't into the other stuff that I talk about. And that's why I was keeping it more like regular interview format. And we talk about subtopics, but definitely didn't go as deep as I could have gone for sure. But that's okay, because there's a time and place for it. And for those episodes, it was about getting into healing, which we all need to do, it seems like. Because if you're alive in this world, chances are you've suffered a trauma on some level at some point in your life. And if you did, you probably would have ended up here. And healing's something we need to do. It's a really hard topic because different things work for different people. And that's why I liked bringing on such an assortment of guests, because they all offered different modalities that helped for different things. And I don't believe there's just one size fits all. And it's not supposed to be like that. We're all different. They've had different experiences, different upbringings. And that's why, like, it's good to get exposed to all the things that are out there that you might not know are there. I also wanted to do these walk and talks because some of my mentors were doing them. The first one I saw do one of these was Max Egan. He does the Crow House or Surviving the Matrix podcast. And he was instrumental in my awakening process for sure. Back in 2017, he was putting some of the best stuff out there. He's still one of the best to go into real history, especially to introduce it to you. The only thing was he was starting to get kicked off some channels, I think around 2019 and 20, what a lot of people were. And then he shifted gears too. I mean, pretty much everyone had to. He switched more to current events because let's face it, in 2020, things were getting crazy and you kind of had to face reality. It was right there in your face. Even if you're the type that does avoid stuff, you could avoid what was going on back then for sure. And I think that's where he still is. I haven't checked him out in a while, although, you know, I'd like to. It's more of a time thing. But he really, especially his old episodes, those were amazing. And they would stand the test of time. Because like I said, that's what's so great about doing what they call kind of evergreen episodes, just topics that are always relevant, is you can go back and watch them, and they're always good. And I think the ones before he got into current events would still hold up because he's a great speaker and really knows how to phrase things. If you have that out of the box kind of thinking, like to go against the mainstream style, he really sums it up and has some amazing insights. And that's, I mean, kind of like how my episodes were. So sometimes it is, like when I did the guest ones, sometimes it is good to avoid current topics. It's good to speak on them, but also those topics that'll hold up no matter when you watch them, so you can catch the next generation of people waking up. The second person was Jeff Berwick. He does the Dollar Vigilante or the Crypto Vigilante. And he used to be a finance person. So back then, you know, I don't think I really was that interested in those topics. So that's probably why I didn't catch him. But then in around 2020, he had a spiritual awakening. Now he's big into healing and spirituality. And I really like the way he mixes things. It's one of the closest styles to mine I've seen. And it's good because he can teach finance to us spiritual people that kind of have avoided it. You know, we got too much into our woo-woo, spiritual, etheric realm stuff. And, you know, when we come back to the physical world and learn how to integrate that, he's someone that can definitely give resources for, you know, financial stuff for spiritual people. And don't get me wrong, I still am not crazy about a monetary system. I've watched the Venus Project, which is a prototype for a resource-based economy, and have still to this day think it's the best way we could go. But we're not there yet. I try to support that and anything like that any way I can, but we're not there yet. And I think that's why Jack Fresco, who was the founder of the Venus Project, and Peter Joseph, who started the Zeitgeist movement and made those documentaries, had a falling out, was because Jack Fresco knew we needed money to get there, where Peter Joseph just wanted to get rid of money right away. And I mean, I would love that, but humanity collectively, we're not quite there yet. We still have a lot of work to do, and I don't think that's a bad thing, recognizing that. And yeah, I'd love to just jump to the upper levels right away of consciousness, but going through the steps, I mean, even I had to do that on my own journey. And you could argue, not that it's a comparison, but arguably I'm more conscious than the average person in the general population. But yeah, even I had to start somewhere. And if other people have to take a little longer, they do. So that's why. I don't even want to say the term necessary evil, but we're not going to get rid of it anytime soon. There's going to be some currency, even with these introductions of new ones like crypto and things like that. So that's why I really like the Dollar Vigilante and Jeff Berwick's work. And he's definitely been another one who inspired me in the Walk and Talks. And the last one is a homesteader. Off Grid with Curtis Stone is his YouTube channel. He's really great because he's a homesteader, I think outside British Columbia of all places. And he's a truther as well. So not only do you get the benefit of learning about how to go off grid and gardening and all these other things, but he also has ways around the stuff that, you know, they're currently trying to do to us as well, which is why I loved his channel. So after all that, I'm like, okay, all these people that I've been watching are going to it. It's not to copy it. It was more like an inspiration. I'm still going to do my own thing, but I just wanted to give him a nod because I think this was a better way of getting information out there. And Max Egan's great. I reached out to him, and he's the one who recommended the camera and the audio and how he was doing it. He'll take his time to talk to you, which isn't easy because when you do stuff like this, you get so many emails and other types of messages and comments. It's nearly impossible to get to them all. So I don't know how he does it, but I really wanted to give him the shout out because you didn't have to do that for sure. And I really appreciated that. One of the crazy things about doing the guest episodes was I started filming about a year and a half into the pandemic, whatever you want to call it. I know some people don't want to call it that, but whatever your preferred term is for that. A lot of my guests were healers I had gone to or met on my journey, and some didn't want to go out. And it was disappointing. The fact that they got scared of a virus with a near 100% survival rate, yeah, that's just going on the statistics they provided. It was crazy to me because I thought, you know, if we're healers, this is the time we're being called. This is our time to rise up. But especially in LA, a lot of the quote unquote healers were locked in their rooms, hiding under their bed. And like I said, these were, some of them were teachers of mine. So I'm like, oh man, it was a little hard on me, hard for me to see, I'll put it that way. And while that was, you know, disappointing to various degrees, depending on who it was, at the same time, I needed to see it. We all needed to see it. And I mean, that was arguably the good part of the pandemic. While it was, you know, obviously a dark time in history, whatever your view of it was, you saw who people really were. And that's the thing, because as we're entering this age of Aquarius, no one can hide anything anymore. So we're really seeing who these people are. And a lot of the leaders in the spiritual and truth communities, they've been pointing out that we're splitting into two completely different paths. There's the people that are trying to hold on to the old system, and you can't do that. Which should be obvious, but it's not to some people. They just want to go back to the old ways. They don't want to change. And I get it, change is hard. But you have to adapt. It's not going to happen to go back to the way things were, which is a really good thing, which I'll get into, if not this episode, then down the road. And then there's the people that are using this as an opportunity and changing themselves. And while the people in control seem to want to steer our society or planet into kind of an evil dystopian direction, this is the time, like, people like me, and hopefully you, can say no and not go back to the old way, but not go into this nightmarish future either. We steer it into kind of a utopia or paradise. And I know you could argue there's no such thing as a utopia, because there's a different definition or version of that in all of our minds. But without humans, this planet really is a paradise. And we have everything we need. There's such beautiful sights and wonders all around this world. And we destroy it. Like, what do people do? They've been destroying it, and we continue to do so. It doesn't make any sense at all. Another problem we have is our society is about appearance. All about appearance. And BS sells. Whether it's the quote-unquote healing or spirituality or consciousness. People love BS, especially in the US. In a way, it makes sense, because the real healing work is hard. It really is. To face yourself, and a term that's thrown about a lot now is shadow work. To do that, to face your darkest parts of yourself and, process that, all the shame, guilt, and regret, and then come out the other side being able to love yourself, forgiving yourself. It's an arduous process. And that's why most people will do just about anything, and I mean anything, to avoid really facing themselves. They'll just keep buying stuff. They'll just watch the worst, mindless garbage. Go get into gossip and all these other low vibrational activities just to avoid acknowledging the person they are. If it's because, you or they aren't a great person, that's okay. That's all the more reason to notice that. Because then once you do, you can start transforming that. And that's the real work. That's also why, a lot of the New Age spirituality really took off. And that kind of stuff, the love and light, I was going to say crowd, but garbage, whatever your term for it is, that'll sell better than anything, because it's the type of thing that looks great on social media, and it's hard to argue with, because there's kind of a narcissism about it where you could get gaslit. So I understand why someone would have a hard time choosing to do the actual real deep inner work, because there's not much outside validation for it. So you have to get to that point where you don't care about it. All you want to do is get better, be a better person. Sometimes that takes reaching a bottom, or there could be other factors too. Just some people do have that spiritual awakening out of nowhere, and then they get that intuitive hit and they just know they have to do it. But whatever the reason, whatever that initial spur or inspiration is, there's a big difference between the real stuff and the and the fluff. And don't get me wrong, like having a self-care light day, I mean, that's great. You should be doing that. The problem is, like, that's not all it is. And if you're doing that 100% of the time, then it's not really the spiritual path or the healing journey. I mean, everything's so fake now. Even our mainstream activism is, as crazy as it is to say that. But just think about it. It's more about, look at me, look what I'm doing, look who I'm helping. And the unfortunate thing is you look at the groups it's supposed to help, and none of them are really better off than when the quote-unquote activists help them. They're in the same spot. It's like, where does this money go? Where does this time go? And again, it's another thing there's narcissism about. I mean, that's the trait of a lot of the narcissists, is their fake public persona, and why so many get involved in these charities and other things that aren't really charities. You know, they're just, you know, tax write-offs or the executives are getting these exorbitant salaries. It's really unfortunate because people pointed out it's people really lack virtue and principle, because if you had it, you wouldn't just change your mind with the way the crowd goes. And it's okay to change your mind. Don't get me wrong about that. I consider myself an open-minded person, but it's when something better comes along, I'll change my mind. When someone presents me with a better philosophy or ideology, that's what I consider changing my mind. And I'll give reasoning why I'm doing it. I don't just change my mind based on, because it's easier to fit in. That's not having your own ideas and just the core virtues that are running through you, which we should have. But so many people it's completely absent for. And I think that's why, you know, the term NPCs, the non-player characters and normies, came about. Because it makes you wonder, are these people even human? And I mean, they have human bodies, so, but I could see why there's some confusion. It's like, how can people not have thoughts of their own or their own ideals? They just go around looking for the next pleasure or distraction. But I'm definitely noticing that, unfortunately, the collective is still all about appearance. Like I mentioned, either with the healing or the activism. And activism, another thing that's kind of never made sense to me, and why it doesn't even seem real, at least the mainstream activism, because if we were in a just society, we wouldn't even need it. And that's where the activism really should be focused on, is making it a just society. Is because if there's activism, that means, you know, there's people that are oppressed, which there certainly are, a whole lot of them. And that's why I don't get, like, instead of just helping them a bit to survive temporarily a little bit longer in this crazy, unfair world, why not just transform the world and make it fair and make it so that they could flourish for the rest of their lives, not just a little temporary relief. And getting back to the people that are trying to hold on to the old system, you might be seeing more people snapping lately or even going full-blown psychotic. That's why you have to be doing the work on yourself and so you can maintain your mental health. Otherwise, it's going to be a very difficult time. I mean, it's going to be a difficult time regardless. Don't get me wrong. I mean, this is going to be the ultimate test, the way things are going. But you're just not making good use of this time. We can't, well, I was going to say we can't choose when we're bored, to quote the Lord of the Rings series, but, you know, I know all my past lives people will say we do choose exactly what we're born and choose our life and the people we're incarnated with. But that aside, once we're here, it seems like. So why not make the best of it? And I know it is hard because these really are unprecedented times. And I don't necessarily mean that in the way, mainstream media people were tossing that about in 2020. But it is. It really is an unprecedented time. Even, because the economic times are kind of crazy now, and just think of it. They're using indicators of old market conditions, but back in 2008, the last real market crash, they didn't even have cryptos back then. That was until a little bit later. I think they started coming out because of that, and people were tired of the banking systems. So it's hard to gauge how things like cryptos or NFTs or all these other things they're coming out with will affect that, and they definitely will. Obviously, like the stock market and bonds and those things still play a role, but we don't know how the new digital currencies and like gaming tokens and currency in the metaverse we don't know how these things will react. Will they help? Will they go up substantially, or will they just tank as well? So that's why there's no, it seemed like in the old days, like when the market tanked, like precious metals just went up and it was pretty simple. Now it doesn't do that so much. And in 2020, when that should have happened, it did. And even when the market should have gone down, it was still going up. It doesn't even make sense anymore. And that's why I think a lot of people are losing it. Unless we work on it, we like to control things. We really have not much under control, but it's hard to grasp that concept, and I understand why, which is why it's important to be doing the healing and spiritual work. So you're okay with the change. You're not trying to hold on to things you have no control over. And before you do that, it's really hard to do. Well, it was good to be back. I really do like doing the podcast. I'm going to try to be rolling out episodes more frequently now, and I should be able to. Thanks for tuning in today. Be seeing you.